I am super excited to greet you here on this interview here with me, Ilona Selke, today greeting Petra Nicoll. She is a multiple best-selling author, also from Germany, living in America, not very far away from where I am at. Actually, she's sitting right there on, actually, this is a picture of the lake of your lake house, vacation home. But you are the best-selling author of Petra's Ashes, a description of your near-death experience when you were 9 years old, and the Billionaires series, a series describing your spiritual journey and about co-creating and manifesting within the matrix and going beyond that, right? So here we are. We have just, before we started recording this interview now, discussed what might be most important for us to understand. And ultimately, the most important thing that we can bring to the table to you is the absolute certainty and experience and massive decades of experience of how we can integrate with the matrix and come from a spiritual perspective to create what I would call heaven on earth. And that no matter what happens around us, we can find a divine path. All of us can. Petra, you have, and both of us have so many parallels. I had interviewed her once before for my book, Dream Big, The Universe is Listening. I was so fascinated with your story, and we discovered that we come from very similar energy paths. I would almost say, like I said, do you remember this past life, this past life, this past life? And you said, yep, yep, yep. And I thought, well, then we are much like, I would say, the hand that has multiple fingers expressing itself, having very similar things happening. And every time you post something on Facebook, I'm going, I was just thinking that I want to be there. And there you are. I mean, how cool is that? So part of you is living my parallel life. Thank you very much. I am excited to share with all of you the power of subspace co-creation. Now, Petra has had the experience of coaching people face-to-face as well as long distance through integration of biofeedback, which sounds really nice, but it is way more than biofeedback. Can you tell me, Petra, a story that you just told me, the breathtaking ability to know things at a distance, and many of you coaches who are coaches could use this kind of technique in your own work with people. But Petra, what is it that you give us the story first and then explain to us what you understand about subspace coaching? Over to you, and I will make it so that the speaker views on, so everybody will see you big time when you speak now. Over to you.
So thank you for having me, Ilona. It's really a pleasure to be here again. And right back to you. Every time you post something, I feel that I had been thinking about it to be there, and then it pops up on Facebook or on Instagram. So we're somehow connected, and our love for King Ludwig and Bavaria and all of that.
Oh my God. And if all of us, if we should dive into that, I would love if you want to share some things about past lives and reincarnation. Let's add that on. Everybody who's interested in that, stay tuned.
So to speak about biofeedback, I was introduced to biofeedback in 2008. A friend of mine mentioned it, and I had always been interested in science. Even as an 11-year-old, I was trying to read Einstein's books, and I didn't understand it. But I thought if I put it under my pillow, I would sort of absorb it, maybe. And I had a near death when I was 9. So my journey to look for my teachers began at age 10. And so it was a long journey for me to actually find biofeedback, which helped me make the things that I was experiencing and thinking about much more palatable to be able to sort of give that feedback to other people. And so a very short story of what just happened a few days ago. I had met this beautiful, beautiful woman who is a Nagual Indian shaman, and she has a center in Oregon. I think it's on the Washington border. Vancouver is in Washington. She came and we were trading, and I wanted her to see the biofeedback device. And about 2/3 into the session, something popped up on the biofeedback that talked about burning in the lungs. And mind you, I have an intake form where I ask, have you ever had, an infection, or have you ever had a major accident, or, do you have any amalgam fillings, that sort of thing. And she said, no, 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 none of that, none of that. But as soon as the burning in the lungs popped up on my screen, she remembered. And this is where it gets very interesting, is that she remembered. The things that we sometimes suppress or we don't want to remember anymore suddenly pop up in order for us to work with them. And she remembered that her father, in a spout, in a fight with the mother, set their house on fire with 3 children and the mother in the house. And she had to be rescued by the fire department with her family. And she had major, major, major lung problems afterwards due to the smoke. And so what came out was that she, the biofeedback gave ideas of what she needed to do. Steam rooms and saunas and more massage and different ailments that different products that would help her lungs clear this.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was really, really fascinating to me. And then a few months ago, a friend of mine posted on Facebook. She lives in San Diego and she's also a healer, and she was very, very ill. She couldn't get out of bed for three weeks, and I offered some complimentary biofeedback to 5 people who answered my ad on Facebook, and she answered it. And she was not in my device because normally I connect people to electrodes on the forehead, wrists, and ankles, and then get them into my system. So once they're in the system, it's easier for me to run them, even if they are in India or in Europe. But she had not been in my system. And I ran a session on her. She was literally not able to move from her bed, even to the bathroom by herself. That's how sick she was. And the next day, after we ran the session and worked through some things with her emotionally, she was able to go to the kitchen and make some soup. So that was another wonderful way to reach people. Now, for those of you that have done Reiki and know distant healing, really, it's no different. It's just that our attention, once we know what ails someone, and once you can envision that, and once you can meditate on that frequency, on that vibration, then we can send healing to the world. So if I'm thinking about the Ukraine right now and close my eyes and visualize what goes on there, and I focus on the people suffering, we can send energy in that way, in subspace. And we call it...
see the result that we do really want. Right. Focus on the healing aspect and know what is wrong. So let me just summarize this for all of us where it might have gone by a little bit fast. So a person calls you, you connect them somehow to the device. With us, my husband and I have been working with Radionics since '87. So that's, we take, it's through a picture. So however you make a connection, you intake them either through electrodes or get some sample of a person. It's so that the connection is made. Then you go through a list of potential questions and you get a reaction. Like for us, we use the galvanic skin response. You can use a pendulum, right? So we get a response. You, in your machine, get a reading. I'm not sure what the mechanism is, but you got with a shaman woman.
It's the same galvanic skin response.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then you got a response and said, you've got something with the lungs, and have you ever had, you asked her about that, right? And she said, no, nothing, no, nothing. And then you said, well, I mean, I'm picking up this and this with the lungs. And then she remembered as a child this trauma, which really set off a sequence of a lot of things that she still suffered from, correct? She still...
Correct. Mm-hmm.
How amazing. So then you're saying by putting the attention back on the origin of the moment of inception, so to speak, and running the program to balance the impressions, in subspace, so to speak. Well, we have books on that, but my husband has written a book on that. But the interpretation as to what happens can be varied. I would say, beyond the astral, we have the informational field. And that's what we're connecting with, right? Though. And then so you're going and you're sending corrective informational fields to that person. And that allowed her then, that woman who was able to go to the kitchen, heal enough or her system magically realign to be able to have the strength. And or for the woman, the Indian woman, did she notice changes, or at least you were able to pinpoint what she needed to do?
I called her the next day, and normally when I run a biofeedback session, people sleep really well. I mean, you get very, very relaxed and very tired. But she said she had such an abundance of energy. It was she didn't even want to sleep the entire night. So much creativity. But as you were speaking, what's so interesting is that because she was sitting across from me, and because I have empathy about the lungs, since that's also something that I deal with, because I was a preemie baby, I had croup, I had whooping cough, we both had the same issues as babies. So my compassion to her I could literally feel that pain and that burning in her lungs. And so therefore, I can automatically send Reiki energy, or, just send lots of light and love to her to heal those lungs. And then whatever manifests out of that in terms of herbs, etc., will just show up.
Okay.
We manifest it.
So
Yeah.
when we come to a healer or to someone who can help us uncover hidden, unrecalled, sometimes past life imprints. I remember with the SE5 machine, I had gone through burnout and I went back in time. I was learning how to time travel, and went back to the moment in origin. And when I flipped the switch within 5 minutes, a person comes to me and tells me about a device, and the inventor was sitting 3 people down. That would be able to be very helpful. So the answer comes once we open the field and set balancing frequencies in, right? That's when the healing, the devices, the herbs, the things come to us. And can you also send corrective frequencies just with the device without people resorting to physical things? Tell me about that.
So the electrodes, like I said, pick up moisture and temperature of the skin, which is galvanic skin response, very much like a lie detector works.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so it's a waveform. It goes like this. It's a waveform energy. And then let's see, I see a deficiency in vitamin E. I can then pull that deficiency of vitamin E into the test tray, push a button that says test, and then it sends the correction of that frequency back to the body. So in the course of a session, you're getting thousands and thousands of new frequencies that are then all around you. There's thousands, and it takes 72 hours to download. So I always tell my clients, go home, take it easy, don't do so much, and, try and get as much rest, drink a lot of water, a lot of water, and eat lighter foods. So
the
it's fun.
absorption of the informational fields comes. Now, on our site, se-5.com, we have an experiment which was done by flowers. This was done by people in India who did a lifetime. I'm not sure if it was India. We have people all over the world, farmers to scientists, quantum doctors to lay people, grandmothers using this type of device. But they took a bunch of flowers and they sent these corrective frequencies to the water, to the vase, one without and one with. And the flowers that gerberas that were standing without the charged water, so just sending the informational field, scalar informational fields, like what you're saying, the waves, the corrective frequency into the water, the flowers that got the water that was informed stayed and stayed and stayed and stayed strong. The flowers, the same bunch of flowers that was in the water, that were in the water that was uncharged, were like, whoa, while these are still standing, eventually these will wilt.
Fascinating.
Yes. So what you're saying is this isn't just me thinking, oh, I'm getting some frequencies, I'm feeling good. It's realistically subspace transmission of information that then our system transforms into felt, experienced, and physical reactions, right? Just like the flowers that stood in the vase with the charged water upright a lot longer than the ones who got normal water.
Well, you know the work of Emoto on the water crystals, right?
Yes,
You're aware of that. So
I
it's
used to.
very much like Emoto's water crystals, where these Tibetan monks were praying over the water. And so they tested the water before, and it was very, very polluted water. And then they tested it after it was prayed over, and the crystals completely changed to these wonderful, beautiful, beautiful, pristine crystals.
Yes, I can actually, I have those two pictures. It was one monk sitting in front
Mhm.
of a lake, like much you're sitting in front of, and they took the picture. They took a sample of the water and
Yeah.
they froze the water and put it under a microscope so you can see how the crystalline structure of the water looks. So you look in and you see, a blobby kind of frozen thing. Then this monk meditates in front of this entire huge lake, just like the one you're sitting there in front of the picture. Then they take the picture from the lake. So I'll give you the two pictures of the two lakes images, and I'll give you the pictures of the frozen crystalline structure after his prayer. I don't know how long he stood there. He was there a while afterwards. So they took it, froze it, put it under the microscope, and here you should be able to see now the beautiful frozen image of the water that had been preyed on by one person.
Hmm. So it's extraordinary.
Extraordinary. So, yes, thank you for bringing that up because a lot of people, we all need to be informed about that. We think always like ourselves as a cog in the wheel, as victims to the circumstances. And before we started, you and I were talking, you said, we need hope. We need to understand how we're not part of the suffering matrix they're trying to portray in the news. Maybe you address that a little bit more in your way and how you give people hope through your books, through your work.
Well, I think that my book, Petra's Ashes, A Transcendental Journey, I wrote it really, I thought if only one person would receive some form of help, then the service of the book would be done, so it would have a purpose. And so one of my nieces in Germany who speaks English, I had not translated it into German. She called me on the phone, and she was only 13 at the time. And she thanked me for writing the book because it did change her life. And at that moment, it was okay if not another copy would sell. It was just perfect. She's the daughter of my favorite cousin who died of leukemia.
Mm.
And so she went through a very, very hard time with her father's death. And reading that book, which is basically about my near-death experience at age 9 and the journey that followed, and then living in India and being with my guru for 11 years, meditating many, many hours a day, and that entire journey for especially young people who, when I walk through Portland, and I see a lot of the homeless tents and I see a lot of young people, and it just breaks my heart because I know that they're seeking answers and they can't find them. And I wish I could take them all home, and hang out with them for a few weeks and help them get
So
on their feet. But
tell me, what would you tell some people? What did your niece get? What does your book, Petra's Ashes, which is available on Amazon, right? So we'll give the
yes,
link below. Yep.
and on Audible. She found much solace in the fact that there is no death and that there is an afterlife.
So tell us
And
about your near-death experience so that some of our viewers might be getting a little bit of hope, if not for this moment in life, but for what is coming.
Yeah, it's funny because my boyfriend always says he's in the 969 club. He wants to live as long as Methuselah. And I said, no, get me out. So my near death, I was, like I said, I was only 9 years old, but I had croup. And then people came home and, the whole hospital trip. So my father was leaning over my body and his tears were falling on my face. And I was on the ceiling looking down and saying, hey, I'm here, I'm okay. You don't have to cry, I'm here. But he couldn't hear me. And then my mother was sitting outside as white as a ghost and having to sign some document that this surgery might mean that I could die. And she was just in absolute terror. Absolute. I felt what she felt, and I felt what my father felt. And then I felt also what the doctors were feeling, this urgency to do the surgery on me, to open my throat and so in order for me to breathe. And I saw the nurses and the doctors basically, getting dressed and all this. And then I shot through a tunnel that was just a light beyond any light you could ever experience on this planet, because it is so bright and so vibrant. And I just flew through there like a rocket, like one of Elon Musk's rockets that I recently saw. And I
Went
came,
right into the light. So, wow.
and then I came out on in this library, in this old library, but it was moving. It was moving back and forth like this, and there was no end to it. This library was huge. It didn't really have a ceiling. So I was in the library looking around, and then I saw to the right these three men looking like something from 2,000 years ago, with these burlap kind of, just this kind of cotton clothing, long, flowy clothing, looking like the ancients. And I saw them a few hundred feet away. And the second I saw them, I was with them.
Wow.
So I stood in front of them and they just chuckled. They just laughed. And I was stating my case that I can't go back to this earth.
Because
And
why not? Why not?
I don't know. I was one of those little souls that just, in the moment I had a memory probably that I came from there and that I did not want to go back to Earth to this crazy family.
So that happens to a lot of people who go across early and then near death. They don't want to necessarily come back. They're like, I like it here, right?
Well, there was so much love, ecstatic. I mean, the love in that place is not something that we can experience here on this planet.
I agree. It's
It,
much
it's
like
nothing,
enlightenment states, the intensity of God's presence is something undescribable. It's like the universe penetrating every cell with love. And so when you were there, what did they answer to you?
well, it was funny because one of the three was Yeshua, Jesus, and he was so illuminated, and his eyes were almost blue. And he said to the other one, and I think it was one of the apostles, he had this big tethered leather-bound book in his hand, and he opened it up to a page, so the pages just flickered through. And I said, I am not going back. I am not going back. Do not send me back there, please. And they were just having a party with me. It was just this laughter. And then he looked at a name in the book and said, oh, I think we can arrange something. And then boom, I woke up the next day in Steinhöring in a hospital that the Nazis occupied. So that was one of the main hospitals in Bavaria that was occupied by the Nazis to breed a new race. And I was in this big hall with one other child. And I heard my mother and my aunt's high heels, footsteps coming through the door and walking across that wooden floor that was so loud. It was so echoing. And I couldn't open my eyes. And my aunt asked my mother what had happened, and my mother just cried and cried and cried and said, I am so glad she survived. I'm so glad she survived. And then I have no memory for 2 weeks inside that hospital. I have zero memory. And then later in my life, when I did a workshop, I used to teach a lot of workshops. I still do. One of my Reiki masters flew out from Chicago, and she performed a fire ceremony around our circle of redwood trees by the fire pit and the sweat lodge. And she kissed me on the forehead and said, welcome, it's so nice to see you again. And I opened my eyes, and she was no longer Karen Mitchell. She was a Tibetan master, an
Uh,
angel. And then
when
later, she,
when was this? Can you tell me the year?
yeah, that was in 1999.
Wow. Wow.
And then later I came to her and she said, hey, Petra, have you ever read my book, Walk-ins? And I said, I didn't even know you had a book called Walk-ins. What's a walk-in? She said,
Oh,
I think you are a walk-in. I think you're a walk-in. I think that when you died, that
that.
soul left and
Ah,
someone else was
yeah, yeah.
given that body.
Yes.
And you
Yes.
have you
So
have all the points for a walk-in. So sometimes, that's sort of funny because the 2 weeks I couldn't remember anything. Was that really the walk-in that was assimilating energy, all the
information.
vibration and the memory and everything else? Because my life dramatically changed after that event.
Yes, I used to be on the welcome committee wagon to meet walk-ins. It just so happened in my life. I knew people, and then I would meet them again. I'm like going, "What happened?" They feel like a different person, and they come up to me and say, "Ah, I am. I don't know. Something happened." And sometimes in the 70s, it used to happen to kids, and can still happen when people take psychedelics, drugs. LSD particularly did a great job at throwing people out of body. Um, I'm not going to go into more of the current scene, but people who don't want to live or who want to leave, really, their body may be functioning and another soul comes in. And my husband had that experience. He
Hmm.
he was in his 70s, and he
Hmm.
left. And I mean, his old self left. He came
Hmm.
in. Within weeks, his eye colors changed. He cut his hair. He stopped doing whatever he was doing. He stopped a lot of things that he was doing. But a year later, his nephew was born. This diseases that my husband had when that part left came reincarnated into the nephew, and the nephew now had all those attitudes and feelings, problems and health issues. And the mom said to Don, her own son, she said she would always call that nephew by Don's name and said, he is
Oh.
more like my son. I don't know what happened, but I am relating to him as my son. That walked out, walked into the baby body and had a couple more decades with the mom and the family, whereas Don, who walked in, now was a free spirit, was brought in through higher dimensional beings and now took off, like you, had a mission, had a purpose, had a whole different life. So you recognize that through the help of this Karen Mitchell, her book
Mhm.
on walk-ins.
Yeah.
And so does that make sense to you? Did
Well, I wrote about it. There's a chapter in Peter's Ashes about that.
Okay.
I
So
think
what
it's useful
what
for
do you
people
find? Have
who
you
have
found other people who've walked in?
a few in India, yes, for sure. And it's everybody has the same, there's a similarity around, well, things really changed. I suddenly was really needed to find my teacher. I
Mm.
suddenly really needed to walk the spiritual path. I suddenly was not interested in, becoming a doctor or an attorney and doing, all the stuff that my family had a desire for me for. It's things like that.
So
Yeah.
a sudden change, and we had one friend whom Don and I said, I think he walked out. He walked in. So the person who now was our friend for a long time had become a different person, and so he said to us, "Why don't we use your device, the SE5, to find out who I was in my past life?" So we sit down and we use the device and we go through. Uh, that part is much like pendulum work, going through the alphabet. and got the letters TJC. TJC. We're like, oh God, who's TJC? What's TJC? Then we said, let's go. We have to get some food. We went to a health food shop that was in Boulder. It was after a conference where Don and I had been teaching. And
Mm.
in comes a guy who had seen us at the conference, the psychotronic conference, and he says, Don, Ilona, I'm so glad I'm seeing you here. Because based on that, what he had heard in our lecture, he said, you need to read the books by TJC, a mathematician who died and went to heaven and now walked back in. The telling thing was that our friend said, well, you know what, I'm doing my doctorate in economics, but honest to God, I feel like I'm a mathematician. I suddenly
Mm.
feel like I'm a mathematician, and that's what I'm really learning and practice and evolving. So TJC was a mathematician, had actually written books on a lot of fabulous things that pertain to the subspace transformation
Mm.
of informational fields and all that kind of. Uh, I don't know all the details. I would have to research. I can maybe find a book to blend in here, but the fact being is we found out where his soul had come from, and now his life made sense, and it made sense to us that our friend was no longer the one we knew but the new soul. And as such, we also related to him differently. He said, look, I look in the mirror. He walked to his psychotherapy group, walked in after his, when he came in, right, walks in, sits down, and everybody says, uh, who's that guy? Like they didn't recognize him.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Right. So,
Mm.
onward and upward, near death experiences. What would you summarize for all of us to understand what is important in this life to do in regards to what you learned from the other side? I mean, you were 9 years old and it would have been hard to bring back, but anything you know since then, is there something we need to know to do in this life
For, well, what to do in this life? I
to,
would, for
yep,
one, number one item, I would say to people spend more time in nature
mhm,
and meditate
and meditate so that what?
so that you can know yourself as spirit or as soul rather than this external, body and mind and ego and all of this. But go inside, go inside, go inside, go inside.
Find the origin of who you really are. Why then are we incarnated?
God, that's a good question, isn't it?
Hmm. I
Because
mean,
probably
why?
after some lessons, I know why I am here.
Why are you here?
I'm here. I mean, my guru flew me to the United States in 19, when was it? I came here in 1980, 88 in December, and he flew me here from India, and he told me that my life was for the mission, and my life was to help people
To
to awaken to God realization, to the fact that we are God, we are part of the ocean, we are a drop of the ocean, and that we are loved, and that we are, that we don't need to be so hard on ourselves, that if we all knew how incredible we are, how beautiful we are, how incredibly enlightened we already are. You can't make it to Earth unless you're already pretty special soul. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to even come here.
we would be, yeah, practicing to be a being, a conscious sentient being. So yes, be connected to the source, awaken to the source within, and know that we are part of the other lady in the other interview said we are a sun with a ray that curves back in space and comes back to itself. It's God inform reinforming itself. It's like individualized, but we are the eyes of God looking back at God. And to me, that's what I think is the answer of life. Be the part and the whole simultaneously. but not just intellectually. How do you have some methods or suggestions for people who would like to dive into more of that connection? People who may be starting out and getting inspired. I am going to sit down, I'm going to do this. What do you suggest to begin with? How do people start out to meditate? And anything for advanced people, because I'm sure we have both sides listening.
Well, I have a book list, but my first book on the list is Paramahansa Yogananda.
Autobiography of a yogi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
read
I
that.
think
That
he did
changed
a
my life.
video. Yeah, and it changed my life. It was the first. I mean, I read the teachings of Don Juan when I was 12.
Right.
That was my first journey.
Mhm.
And then I became a Rosicrucian, or at least in my mind, I thought I was one. And then I was really obsessed with the whole thing around the Illuminati. It's
Oh.
like- and, you know, I was just searching, and reading Yogananda's book, The Autobiography of a Yogi, and then maybe going to some local meditation groups where you can just practice maybe 20 minutes of sitting still without your cell phone would be good. You know,
Mhm.
just going inward, just making it a habit to wake up a little earlier. And even if you can't still your mind, look at a candle or
Mhm.
something, find a point of attention and just, you know, or walk in nature, take a walk through the forest and use that as a meditation.
Mhm.
You
And
know,
then, yeah,
for
go on.
those of us, Ilona, that are living out in the country like you and I do, even when you're in Bali, I mean, we're fortunate to have so much nature. I just came back from New York City. I took a 3-day, a 4-day workshop with Nam Singh, who is a Taoist priest and teaches Taoist healing cooking classes, which was extraordinary, and I learned a lot. But I loved that city, but oh my God, how do people live there? I don't know how, I would not survive. I
Right.
wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an
I,
extraordinary
it's,
city.
I mean, I remember, and we moved to Seattle area in 1987, and we went went map dowsing and said, where shall we live? And I landed in the water right in front of our piece of property that we bought 3 years later. But it was water. So I said, I'm not going to buy a houseboat. Interestingly enough, I noted where that was, right across from a beach on the coastline, Warm Beach on north of Seattle. And I then 3 years later, when we bought the piece of land, actually it was 2 years later, because we offered meditation classes, and the woman who came just had moved there and invited us there for a housewarming party. So this, we put out a call. We taught meditation classes for free. She came. She then took us, said, "Come on here." Brought us. She lived a stone throw away from the land that we then bought, which was right
Like,
in front what we had found on the map using that subspace device, the SE5.
yeah.
So anyhow, 88. So similar. We moved here in 87. So 89 is when we found that piece of land. Similar dovetail. But where am I going with this? Oh shoot, I lost this thread. The when we listen to the information, when we become awakened to, and Don said, I'm going to take you out of the city, we become more sensitive. So I was becoming so sensitive, I could hear the news uh, with my ears wide open out of the thin air. So here I'm coming back just we came from Bali. We have a retreat center in Bali, Shambhala. And I'm sitting on our balcony and I'm meditating. And suddenly I hear Sasquatch. And I'm like going, Sasquatch? Seriously? What's that? Are people thinking about Sasquatches here suddenly? The next thing I know, you know what came out that week in America? And Sasquatch. It's this whole movie about a Sasquatch. And I'm sitting there, I'm like going, after I found that out 3 days later, I said to Don, why do you think I saw in my meditation a Sasquatch? What do you think the deeper meaning of that is? And it's referencing to your sensitivity of living in a big city. The intensity of information, it's in the ether. If we're sensitive enough, we can pick up everybody's thoughts if we wanted to. We don't have to. We have to learn how to specifically tune our crystal radio station to the tune you want to listen to. But yes, I do agree that it could be in nature to filter out that noise that is from somebody else and places else other than your own self, and then get to know what your static electricity, emotional, unfinished business is because they ruminate. We start thinking about unfinished businesses or future projects we're super excited about. And then you let that cycle and eventually you move. And I don't expect myself to sit down in the morning and be crystal clear and totally no, nothing in my mind. I let the layers go, and I do my best to-do lists in the first 10 minutes of meditating or 5 minutes, and then go and go and go and go. And it refines naturally if we know that there is a return current. And you said you heard the Om. And if you take that sound to the source code, the origin, the Shabda Yoga people do that, right? They return with a sound to the source, just assuming that there is a source, a place to where we come from and return to. Then in your meditation, you, over time, weeks, months, decades later, you get to experience eventually the total unification of that. But it takes time to purify the lenses and the accumulated past life stuff, right? I mean, the thoughts, the belief systems, the memories, and unfinished business. And we have to clear it all. We have to take our time. So yeah, being clear. What methods do you personally use for your deep meditation? Where do you come from? What is your Indian path that you practiced or are now practicing?
I think you've already heard of this. I believe from our last conversation, I was on a Radhaswami path, light and sound meditation.
No, 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 no. I didn't hear that. I'm sorry. Our interview was what, 20, 10, 15 years ago. Anyways, no, guys, I'm being honest. I listen to her and I go, if you ever have the chance to meet another of yourself manifest to listen to, you'll know. But I feel like, oh my God, it's not by chance that we do what we do and find what we find. So you came through the light, same, I came through the light and sound teachings. That is where I walked from and I still practice. So tell us all about it more. I don't know that particular teacher, but go ahead.
It was Takar Singh. He was disciple of Kirpal Singh.
Kirpal Singh, same. Oh my God. I mean, mine was a different version, but yeah, okay. And
So there was Charan Singh. You know how the lineages split whenever a master would die. And so I had a boyfriend briefly before I went to England at age 17. My mother passed away when I was 16 and I moved to London when I was 17. And right before that, I had this boyfriend and he was diagnosed with cancer. And I was devastated, but I couldn't stop my life path. I had to leave. And I had so many experiences and visions in England that that was the first time that at age 18, that Jesus came to me again for the second time. He came to me 3 times. And this was the second time. And he told me that a teacher is coming for me soon, that he has a teacher for me, and that I was on the right path because I had left the Catholic Church and I felt really, really guilty. And I signed off to the Vatican in Rome. A letter signed. I was so upset about the Catholic Church at the time. But I considered myself a believer of Christ. I just couldn't relate to the religious part of it, or the organizational part. And so I came back to Germany after I saw a medium. That was my first visit to a medium, and they sent me back to Europe to secure my finances because I didn't know that I had an inheritance, and this medium brought in my grandfather's spirit who told me that I had some money waiting for me, and I needed it desperately.
The medium told you.
Medium told me, yeah. And I found out that my father had left the family home to my brother, who had gambled most of it away. But there was a contract that said that if he sold the house, he would have to give his sister half of it. So I still received some money from that. And I had to, reveal to the family that my brother had a gambling addiction, etc. So I looked up my friend Walter Schumann, who was a delightful being, a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful soul. And I called him and I said, "Do you know anything about meditation?" And I'm not talking about Rajneesh. That's what I said to him on the phone. I said, "I don't want to know about Rajneesh. I just want to know if you know anything about meditation." He said, "You better get on the train and come here now." And I went to the satsang hall in Erding, in this little town outside of Munich. And Walter walked out from behind the garden and he had completely transformed his body. He looked completely different. And he put his arm around me and he said, "Let's go inside." And then there was the picture of the master. And I said, I was speechless because I had been seeing this guru inside my mind for 3 years and I didn't know who it was.
What? You'd seen that picture and didn't know? Wow.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Then I said, has this something to do with Zoroaster? And he says, yes, it goes all the way back to that.
Mm.
And then he drove me home that night, and I had a initiation dream or initiation vision where I was flying through space with all these rose petals, and then my master was sitting on a bench in this arch of trees that were hugging on the top, and light was streaming from behind it, and he was looking and bending forward, and then I ran to him, and I fell on my knees, and he put his hand on my face like this with my hand. And then I felt this electric current going from my toes all the way up through my crown chakra and out. And then we just flew through the universe, and then there was so much love and so much ecstasy and so much joy to be finally at this place with my teacher. And then of course he had to send me back, and my friend who was dating my brother in the family home where I was staying with all this fiasco going on, she was next to me, and she was waking me up because I was crying so much because I had to leave this place of love and beauty. And she woke me up and said, Petra, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I said, oh my God, we are initiated. And she was there in the dream as well, in her astral body.
But
And
didn't
she was also initiated
and
into
did she?
Surat Yoga.
Ah,
She did
ah.
get initiated. Yeah, she got initiated.
She okay. So I just for all of us, I do recommend looking up whatever light and sound path you may feel drawn to. All the major people in my life are, without me knowing it, have been um, are business people, business partners from all over the world were associated with that path and are somehow, I mean, it's miraculous. It is a true teaching in my book. And you know that Shabda Yoga and that path originally was set out to let go of all the differentiation of castes. They allowed women in, which the other groups and teachings didn't. And they really were trying to level the field and focus simply on the return to the source, non-deified, not having the various godlike images. It was in my book, and is in my book, the pure form. It's similar to what Buddhism tried to do, except Buddhism kept it, patriarchal. Buddhism was also trying to take Hinduism out of its deity idealization and forming it into a particular vision of gods, into just the it. But in light and sound, you still have this the source God, Sukmat, and I'm not sure what your terminology is, and the sound currents and the different stages. And in the initiations, you go stage by stage, and different sounds become the teacher rather than an entity or a person. I love it. Anyway, it is what.
That is an excellent way to put it, Ilona. That was just a beautiful way to put it. Yeah, that
Thank
the
you.
different sounds become your teacher.
Yeah, it's
In
I.
fact, the lake that you see behind me, this is so extraordinary how God and source creates our movie. Because this lake house that I'm currently remodeling, because it had water damage and it's, has a lot of problems. I was granted a vision with my guru in, I think it was 1991. We were in Santa Barbara at the Hidden Valley Ranch for a retreat. And I was given this vision where the master and I were on a swan floating like a boat, and he was stirring the swan from left to right, and he was so tall in his astral form, and I had this little magic wand in my hand reclining on the swan, and he told me that I could create any world I wanted to see. And I saw these liquid crystal amethyst and diamond gold silver mountains flowing, and it was exactly the vision of this lake where I now live.
Oh my God, it's a Hansa, right? That's what they have in their mythology. Wow, wow, wow. So you saw that 20 years ago or something in your vision. My,
Yeah,
I mean,
and now I get to live at this lake with Mount St. Helen as a backdrop. So it's just really, I mean, I'm just beyond grateful
I
that
mean,
this was given.
I want to just give everybody a quick vision as to what my actual background is. This is the view from my balcony. This
Look
is
at that.
um you see there is water right there. That's the west coast of America. I'm on the side um of an island, and I'm looking eastward for the sunrise, and there is water between us and the mainland. And I mean, I'm actually in the garden at a wisteria, and I was trying to take a picture of some bees because I was so thrilled seeing bees the other day. I'm like, our life is okay. We still have bees. I feel obsessed. Einstein said, if we didn't have bees 4 years from then on, we can pack up humanity. So I get ecstatic when I see bees. I'm like, we're still safe. So the truth of the matter is you and I are living similar parallel lives. And I when I interviewed you, I had no idea the first time. But the things you said, I'm like, it dawns on me. I mean, I have met a number of my parallel versions. I remember in Bali, owning it, I was out there, and then a woman comes, walks towards me. I say hello, and I'm thinking, you are me. And I said, do you know what I just thought? And she said, I am you, or she had had the same thought, that you are me
Mm.
and I am you. We shook hands, and we were like, I have a picture of her and I dancing as a yin yang, her dressed in black, me dressed in white, which a photographer, a Vogue magazine photographer, top class. He just said, "Let's go, girls. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to picture you." And we were dancing that dance of the union of all parts that create the whole. But we are, as souls, we always think it's just me, but really we are a conglomerate, but we have patterns that are trying to learn and then bring the information to that soul origin. I mean, the individuation is ourselves, um, but I'm blown away how many similarities we have. I didn't know that you were having a quantum machine working in subspace. I really didn't know that you were into light and sound. I'm sorry. I just have been in touch with you more as like, the woman I interviewed, and then we've been in touch and touch and touch and sending just pictures and sharing stories and learnings along the way. But these details are even more a sign. Whatever we are, the way you and I live, we live for, I mean, patterns that are repeating themselves. So, what do you think about that? Are we individualized souls living only our own reflection, or are we a pattern that has a certain potential? And if we listen to the upper tune, we have an updraft and or a downdraft version of that, but it's not like I can just become completely different. What do you think about incarnations as individuals and souls and similarities and soul unions and all that?
Well, I had this very strange occurrence in my life over and over and over and over playing out that had to do with Mary Magdalene,
Yeah.
where people approached me and said, you know, you were alive 2,000 years ago, you're Mary Magdalene. I said,
Same here. Yeah.
great,
People,
great, great,
somebody just
great.
said that to me yesterday. Said I came to Shambhala, I meditated, I channeled, and and then I'm like going, what do I say now? And she's like, the center.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like going, oh, I don't want to say yes because I mean, I was in Israel. I had dreams. I walked in the Jordan River, and I had a dream that I was Jesus's disciple, and I saw my
Mhm.
feet. I saw my feet. I oftentimes in my in a number of my recollections, I particularly see my feet because I can look down and see who I am and walking through that. So you and I would have then had to occupy the same identity. And I know a couple others who feel that that's who they were. But do we plug into a current of information? Are we that? What do you think? Tell me about that.
Well,
We're
you
God's
know,
people.
being in the airport in New York City, walking to our gate, I had this brief moment that I had many, many, many times in my life where I thought every soul in this airport has known each other. Because 2, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 40,000 years ago, there weren't as many souls on the planet. We all come from a group soul essence, and somehow we've all crossed paths before. And therefore, really, I felt love for every soul in that airport.
Beautiful.
It felt like they're all soul family. They're not separate from me.
Oh, beautiful.
And so the Mary Magdalene thing is, you know, even though it's been very intense sometimes with people that recognize me as that and are convinced that that's what is truth. But it is perhaps truth to them, and perhaps it is true that I lived, and it's most likely that I lived 2,000 years ago, and like it was for you 2,000 years ago. But it's also likely that I was alive 40,000 years ago during Atlantis.
Right.
So,
And
so
who
we
knows
all,
what
we
that's
all
why
come
I'm
together.
asking is like when we have patterns, are we plugging into a matrix, into a library? Are we plugging into a library and embodying a life for a learning of a soul quality? Or, it's like we take the basic imprint and we shape it this way or that way, or I, it's a mystery. It's nothing as straightforward as even when we esoterically have been taught. There's a soul that goes out, comes in, reincarnates, learns. It's a linear thing. I mean, it's really far out, and I think it goes as far out as you can comprehend and become the wholeness, the oneness. Like you said, in essence, you could be in each one because God is each one. And only the one perceives itself as individually separate. Like you and I, or you and me, I'm talking to you, we're doing an interview, right? You have your learnings in that individuation, I have mine. But where does it feed into? Where does it actually coalesce at another dimension? And
And since there are so many dimensions, I mean, everything is just connected. It's like, look at Oppenheimer. How did he channel this information?
mm,
Must have been in Atlantis, because only he would have had that kind of access to this sort of data that was downloaded into him to create what he created with much problem following. But I mean, we are all exposed to the potential that we could access all dimensions
yes.
and the information that exists there from all
Absolutely. And that is what I
planets
sat
from
on.
planet Earth. We're not just from planet Earth.
Right. And do you have memories of having been extraterrestrial?
Well, I mean, I'm careful about that word
Whatever
extraterrestrials.
you want to say it, but do you have what kind of in relationship to that, whatever vocabulary you want to use?
Well, I was told I was from Aldebaran, travel of, this is where people fixed bones and things, and it was a planet of travel and adventure. I was there. Lately, I've been told that I was in, what is this called, this planet? Oh God, it's a very popular planet that
Alpha
everybody talks
Centauri?
about.
No.
Yes, yes.
Hmm.
So, I mean,
So, I mean,
I'm
did
here
I
on
hit the
Earth
right thing?
now.
There
Yeah,
it
I'm
is.
here on Earth now, and I try to not go too far out with it. Um, I feel that the longer I'm here on this earth, it was not like this when I was younger, but the longer I'm here on earth, the more I love this planet.
Yes.
The beauty of this planet is so extraordinary, and my guru did say to me that I had to come here for 3,000 years, that my assignment was for 3,000 years. And I asked him, I said, do I have to be born as a baby each time? He said, not necessarily. We'll see what we can do.
Just like
Like to
last
come
time.
here for 3,000 years because, I want to see the transformation. We are on the verge of such huge transformation.
What do you see for the future?
Well, if we wake up, if we become more conscious, then we can create heaven on earth and the golden age will come. According to the Bhagavad Gita, we are on the threshold of the golden age. My guru said we're moving into the golden age. Peace for 1,000 years. 1,000 years, 1,000 years is not a long time. I
Yeah.
hope that humanity can graduate to be not a warring race, but a race of love, and like Lemuria, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
consciousness, a higher consciousness.
And I think that's the dividing, line we're walking right now, technology and consciousness. And the removal of consciousness, the transhumanists who think that you can upload soul or consciousness into a computer algorithms, and those who say, and I urge all of you who are still listening, please work on yourself daily to awaken that jewel of your seat of your soul, of your consciousness, because that is what you traverse time space with. Once, if people sign up to just being in the entertainment machine, in the augmented reality, it's pure entertainment, and it doesn't forge the diamond of the seat of your soul. So forging the virtues, forging your character, forging your focus, it allows you to shapeshift reality, shapeshift the form into your desired world. And either, I, for myself, am living in my heaven on earth. And like you, I look around and I go, oh my God, I don't want to space travel. This blue jewel is phenomenal. But I also visualized what I wanted, what I needed. And it took persistent, consistent effort to hone my focus consistently now still to updraft reality always into a higher expression. So I'm with you on the fact that, hey, this planet is a gift. And I salute you for, yeah, coming back, being excited. So how do you envision, do you listen to the news and go like, oh my God, the next atomic bomb is going off? Or do you hold in your vision, how would it be if we were all peaceful, and then feel the peace? What do you do in your daily life?
I listen to the news sometimes, but I don't really take the media that seriously. I mean, I don't really pay, it doesn't affect me.
Hmm.
I think it is just a game that's being played. But this game, like you said earlier, could become very dangerous because of Hiroshima and Nagasaki and what had happened before.
Yeah.
And so we are on the threshold of something, that may happen, may or may not happen. But I believe collectively we can transcend it. We can shift it.
So the
Tra-
call to all of us, the call to all of us listening here, we are the harbingers of light. We are the lighthouses. Your power of your focus creates gravitational fields and will shape shift reality around you, and then collectively blesses the field around you. So all of us holding the vision of what I like. Yesterday I sat out there and I thought, okay, fast forward our evolution, I can see the point where humanity gives up war. I can. I can envision it. I can permit that in my being.
Mhm.
So I think that is the homework we all need to do. And
What's it going to take for us to wake up?
yeah,
Mm.
to that end, people can take coachings with you, can do individual work, can learn from your amazing background of spiritual journeying, can read your books. We will make sure that you have the series of books, the
Billionaire series.
billionaire
Yeah.
the billionaire series. Tell me roughly what that is about. Or I don't know.
My partner was one of the biggest home builders here in Portland, Oregon, luxury homes, and he was working on a deal in California and met this gentleman who took him to a meeting. And during this meeting, I won't mention names, but they had him sign a contract to give his wealth, 90% of his wealth, to that organization and be promised in the next life to come back wealthy. And I laughed so hard. I rolled on the carpet. I couldn't believe it. Luckily, he didn't sign it. But that night, I had a download for that entire book. And it turned into 4 books, and it turned into the Billionaire series #1, the Continuum, which was a German billionaire who living in America, who was basically not a particularly nice person. He was sort of a shady character, and he passes away, and he goes into the afterlife and meets his guide, Michael. And in the book, you don't know if it's Michael the Archangel or who Michael really is. But Michael tells him that, he can't be, after he does life review, he can't come back as a poor person because he signed this contract with the secret society called Gemini. And so he has to come back as this rich person to inherit all his 40 billion again. And so I have him come back as a little boy in Brownsville, Oregon, to become the biggest rock star that ever lived. And so Eli Evans is the little boy, and he becomes this amazing musician and invests in cryptocurrency. and he becomes this superhero kind of character who goes through all the spiritual lessons that I had to go through in India. So I was able to build into all of my trials and tribulations of becoming a disciple of my teacher, and a deserving disciple of my teacher, and all the lessons we had to go through with our dietary needs and lifestyle, etc., and the meditation. And he also had to clean up his past life in the book.
Okay. Yes, yes. I can tell. I've watched a few people reincarnate and watched their soul, how they're now in various cultures. I know a couple of them where, I mean, they told me, some actually told me the day they were being reincarnated. So I happen to know who they became. But I can tell you, we don't change that much. We really don't change that much. Maybe we have a different persona, but what was important to us, the values, the deepest values, and how and what we do for the world and what's important to us, we will continue doing. It is phenomenal. The tendencies in Bali, they live, for example, with that natural understanding that we reincarnate. And there, I remember one boy. I just got the hit. I sense things long distance. So suddenly, the seer comes into my mind. I'm like going, oh, what are you doing here? Checking me out. And he's like, yeah, well, I'm supposed to look at you. And I'm like going, dude, you have to ask for permission here. But anyways, what are you doing? And I said, oh, that little boy that you're looking at, his past life, that was so and so, right? So I call up the father of that boy and I say, did you just happen to go to a seer? Yeah, I just did. And did you find out that your little boy is the reincarnation of da da da? And he said, yeah, I did. And he said, yeah. So I said, yeah, that's who he is. It's what I see too. And then I said, did you ask him to check me out? And he said, oh, I'm so sorry. And, and I
Oh,
said,
that's
well, I mean, he's now totally convinced that I can see things long distance. But the point being that the seer in Bali, which is how people live there, I love it, confirm to the parent, yeah, your boy was this person in a past life, so these are the tendencies. He has the same physical traits. And so the whole issue of lungs and whatever you're going through, the new freebie, early B, what do you call them? The early born newbies. no, not newbies. What are the early borns?
The
Huh?
preemies.
Preemies, preemies. Yeah, yeah,
Preemies.
yeah. Both, me too. The issues we learn to transcend, or the lessons that we learn. I remember asking, who is my so and so? And as I'm flying to see this little girl in Germany uh, being born in my family, I'm not going to mention details now. And I opened the paper and it tells me a story about a boy that died at age 10 in Texas. Well, some weeks before that, I had had a dream where this girl now says, I was this boy from Texas, this
Oh
girl,
my God.
this newly born girl tells me in my dream that she used to be this 10-year-old boy from Texas. I'm flying home to Germany to meet this little 6-month-old baby. I'm opening the magazine and it said, this little 10-year-old boy in Texas died from these and these things under these conditions with this mindset, da da da. I got the whole thing. Well,
Yeah.
mind you, that is the issue that this girl grew up with and had to, and I was instrumental in teaching her psychoimmunology and an attitude of, the fact that we can co-create and dream not only physical things, jobs, reality, business, da da da, but and relationships and all that, but also our own DNA. So she learned to talk to her DNA and to shapeshift it out of the anxiety and fears that she came from that brought her into this past life. Actually, before that, she came from outer space. So this boy was in a tent because he couldn't handle the bacteria on this planet. So now, next lifetime, she is worried about all these things, and has an immune deficiency issue, um, and is always worried about being bitten and all that. And then it happens. But I'm teaching her how to deal with all these problematic mindsets and help her to transform into the belief with the course Living from Vision, how to pre-envision success, beauty, and strength, not only in a personal life, but in health as well. And so we come from a passage slowly changing our mindset, slowly strengthening our beliefs into what we're here for, what we can do with this matrix, ultimately to awaken to the fact that we are God dreaming up life, and doing it better and better until all that there is love and blessing.
Beautifully said.
So I'm just trying to feed in stories because stories make things palpable for us all. So, all right, if you had a message to your younger self from all the things that you then went through after your, you know, before, I mean, let's just say after your walk in, what is a message you would give your younger self? And maybe to all of us, what is a true message in your life, a wisdom you have come to at this point that you think people should know?
Number one, do not be afraid of anything. I had a lot of fear earlier on, downloaded probably from my parents who went through World War II, and to live fully and to really, really experience the beauty of this planet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That would be the number one message to my to my little self to not be afraid and just dive in because you never know when it's gonna end. So it's such a short life.
Yes. Yes.
Take
So
the
absolutely.
bull by the
Um,
horn. Take the bull by the horn.
yes. 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 Um, I totally agree. And I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you for your participation in all this. I am so grateful. Um, I am going to put you on hold for just a moment and I'll be right back. So thank you so much for your message to enjoy the beauty of this planet, to dive in fully and to live fully, because this is an amazing lifetime. We live better than all the kings ever did, no matter what life we live. If you're listening to this talk, you have a life that's better than any of the kings before us had. You have running warm water showers, for example, most likely. You have a TV to a computer to look at. And so you say not to fear. What would you do if you were to frame it positively? What do we need to nurture rather than not be afraid? What could we develop as a strength?
Look at our telephone less and look at our look. Don't look at your cell phone as much. Just go to the mountains.
Be in nature. Okay, okay, okay.
Tree,
Well,
plant a tree.
I had a conversation throughout time. I accompanied one woman who was my seminar participant decades ago, and she took with her husband handicapped children to swim with dolphins with us in Key
Mm,
West, Florida. And when she died at age 40, so really young, and I always say, only the good get to go young, yeah. Anyways, may not be that good, right? It's okay. Uh, she she came to me various times, and the last time she came through, she said something along the lines of what you said. She said, "Have absolute certainty." That is an achievement, to go and focus and have absolute certainty within whatever you focus on and that you find worthy of becoming reality. Be in
mhm,
that absolute certainty. It's the same message I had in an interview with Ida Ali Rislit out of Bali. She is the water priestess, and she said the number one thing for us all to remember to have, and she used the Indonesian word keyakinan, absolute certainty. Faith. We
mm,
can call that faith in English. But how do you have faith? Faith is what? The certainty that what you focus on will come true when you align it with your soul and the source. And everything says go. It comes into your life and you live the perfect purpose of your life. Thank you. So,
so,
Petra, I want to thank you for the interview, the amazing wisdom and liveliness and approachability that you bring to all our audience and the clients that you work with and your life that you live. You do go into nature. I know a lot, lot, lot.
yeah.
So, yes. So, do you have a,
Most of you know I'm a ski bum.
that's the one thing I'm not. Tell me how, is there something that people can get from your website as a gift?
Oh, yes, there is a meditation, a golden light meditation that works primarily on your inner child, getting in touch with your inner child. That is available. I can put that up for you and you can just download it on YouTube or SoundCloud.
Oh, well,
I
I'll just give
always,
the website address and then people can go and
oh,
find you there. That's what we'll do. Yep.
petranicoll.com. Very simple.
PetraNicoll.com. Okay, PetraNicoll.com, and then you'll find that golden light meditation. Awesome. Thank you. That way people can immediately do something, get started, do more with themselves. Thank you a millionfold. I'm going to put us on right now. So we're side by side.
Ilona, you are so beautiful.
Same, 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 same. Blessings to you, Petra. And to you all who have listened this long, go do something every day to be in nature and to do for your spirit and soul. And one thing you really want to achieve in that day, whether it's just one post-it note, that's my focus for today. And you will find that your self-esteem will grow and the power of your focus will grow and nature will nurture you. So I am so delighted we had this. Thank you very much, everybody. And we'll greet you in another interview here on the channel at ilonaselke.com here on YouTube. Bye.
Bye.